Thank you so much, though, for coming and being part of this special panel discussion, all part of Green Careers Week. And what I do have is a little bit of a blurb to give some context to the Green Careers Week. And it's been really exciting, actually. Nick and I were just talking about this, the kind of energy that's been happening, particularly on social media, all the exciting and dynamic things happening across the country. And I've got a bit of blurb from the Green Careers website, which I think also helps set up a bit of the context for this discussion that we're going to have around the question, should every job be a green job? And also, I should mention that we've got a really great panel of people from real varied backgrounds, different contexts, and I'll introduce those people as kind of as the call goes. So, Green Careers Week is this sort of exciting, dynamic week that happens every year and has now for a number of years. And it's a sort of offshoot of National Careers Week. And what Green Careers Week is trying to do is to raise aspirations and support diversity and challenge actually a lot of the stereotypes around green careers. And what it wants to do is promote real opportunities for young people to have a career that maybe genuinely makes a difference. And so the week is about platforming organizations and jobs and opportunities and really getting young people to think about their futures and potentially what green skills and green jobs might look like for them. So a green career, and this is from Nick, you might be able to help explain this a bit more in a minute, but from the website it says a green career is a job or any job role or occupation that contributes to preserving or restoring the environment and our planet. And it could be any in any industry, not just those seen as green. So green skills are abilities, attributes, values, attitudes, knowledge, and technical skills needed to adapt services, processes, and procedures to support climate action. And I think that's quite a good framing for us maybe to explore later on. So just to begin then, I'm going to introduce Nick Newman. And Nick, you are the CEO and founder of National Careers Week. And I guess I should probably introduce you as a kind of all-round careers expert, and you've been involved in this for decades. Before we kind of get into a bit more around the question, I wondered, do you want to just give a bit more context about your career yourself?
Thanks very much for that, Paul. Right, I definitely don't like the word expert. I have a massive interest in the subject and have done for many years. So, yeah, without boring everybody, my kind of introduction, one of my earliest jobs after college was for a very traditional careers publishing company. So that was back in the day when everything was kind of great heavy tomes, going into schools and you go to the library and it'd probably be on a bit of string or rope in those days. But yeah, so I come from a very traditional careers publishing background, which got me kind of interested. And then to show my age, I remember actually the first year that MTV, as it was, kind of hit UK shores. I remember looking at videos and thinking, yeah, this is what kind of young people want. They don't want these hefty tomes talking about all the different kind of careers, the 350 different job profiles in there and all the descriptions. And it's got to be something more exciting and more interesting. So that kind of made me think, let's do something with videos, short, sharp kind of videos, day in the life of. One thing led to another, and yeah, I was delivering seriously physical VHS videos into schools with employees talking about what it was like to do the jobs they did. So that was kind of my background. Luckily for me and for what I was doing, the internet came along, and we thought, oh, that's a much more sensible distribution channel than me and my rubbish car with a boot full of videos going around schools and saying, hey, have these free videos and share them in your careers lessons. So, yeah, I set up something called Careers Box back then, which was the first free kind of online careers video library for schools. And that's where kind of my background and kind of interesting in careers started. So I ended up doing a lot of the interviews myself. We produced over 500 odd job profiles back in the day on video. And I was really lucky enough to get a great kind of introduction across most employment sectors. So I classically talk about not being a specialist, not, and being a generalist. And I actually love being a generalist because, it means that I can not be the most boring person at parties. And also I have some interesting facts along the way as well. So that's my background. Green Careers Week, well, National Careers Week was set up basically after government cuts to youth services. Those of you again might remember we used to have these things called connections officers and connections officers in many secondary schools. And pretty much overnight, they just started disappearing along with a lot of other youth services after, yeah, governmental cuts. And National Careers Week effectively was born out of a social media campaign called the Save Careers campaign back in the day, where just really became a place where disenfranchised careers professionals and people interested in careers could kind of come together and just work together to try and keep kind of careers as information, advice, and guidance alive in a place where it was disappearing. So it won't take many brains to link together National Careers Week, then having an offshoot called Green Careers Week. But that came from our friends, STEM Learning UK up in York, who kind of approached us and said, "Hey, look, it's got to be something for green careers in here." And that's when I said it's far too big a subject and too important to parachute international careers. Let's kind of just do something as a standalone. So 5 years ago, that was the birth of Green Careers Week.
Wow, that sounds really interesting. There's quite a journey, Nick, there as well. What about this question then? Should every job be a green job? Where do you sit with this?
Okay, I think so. For many people that probably know me, no, I'm not a guy for sitting on the fence, and I'm probably personally a bit Marmite out there. So I'll just dive in. Why change the habit of a lifetime? For me, the whole point of Green Careers Week was showing young people that any job potentially could be a green job, and have a careers pathway, which would probably change quite dramatically as they do. But so for me, I loved when I still go in and do assemblies saying, do you realize a barrister, could be a green job? And you get all these kids look at you and go, this guy is nuts, certifiably. And I say, well, let's unpack what we mean by green. And hence that's your question, which is obviously loaded. And that's why I agreed to come on here and go first, because I love it. And green for me is kind of, that crossover between, carbon footprint, net zero. Are you, can any job be the green job? In my simple terms, yes it can. Yes it can. There's obviously going to be some jobs where you say clearly, that cannot be a neutral carbon footprint kind of job. It really can't be net zero. And I would take that on its merits and have a look at it. But I think we have to at least aim and have a benchmark which says, let's aim for every job being a green job, even if we cannot agree that 100% of jobs are green jobs at this moment in time.
I guess that's a really good, yeah, kind of base for us all to kind of start the discussion on as well. It's a really interesting perspective, and thank you so much for sharing your sort of background more as well and your kind of own experiences. And I think we'll come back to them again in a minute as well, Nick. Um, Okay, let's move on, if that's all right. And I'm just going to introduce our next sort of panelist. We're joined by Helen Taylor, and Helen is a trustee of the Green Britain Foundation that actually funds and supports the Ministry of Eco-Education. But Helen's also an ambassador for Ecotricity and the kind of wider Green Britain group of companies. And in the past, Helen has worked for the Soil Association and also a rather quirky one, CEO of Forest Green Rovers as well, back when Dale first bought the club. And yeah, Helen, would you like to talk a bit more about some of your career?
Yeah, definitely. Hi, everyone. Can you hear me okay? Perfect. So, yeah, I guess I have an interesting career. I went to school, didn't really enjoy it that much, to be honest, and wasn't really conscious that I was being prepared to go to work at all. And I have a real thing about wanting to help young people try and kind of realize their potential at an early stage because I don't really feel as if I got that at all. So yeah, I went to school, Came out of school thinking I was going to ride horses for all my life because that's what I was interested in. And then kind of flipped at the end when I realized that no one was going to force me to do anything. I decided to go and do food technology, study food technology. And I went off to agricultural college down in Cannington in Bridgewater and did a course that barely anyone was on. There were about 12 of us on this food technology course, and I chose it only because it seemed relatable. It seemed like something you could learn about how food was produced. I was interested in that. And I had an interest in agriculture because I was out in the countryside a lot riding. My father used to go for walks with him every day when I was little, so I love nature. And I just thought, well, I'll do that and then decide what I'm going to do when I come home. Um, and I really loved the course. I enjoyed everything about it. I learned about how to produce food, how it was grown, all the microbiology, the biology, the chemistry, everything that went with it. And it really dawned on me at that point that when you learn, you need to learn about things that are relatable. So I came away from it thinking, right, okay, what do I do now? Just came home and went riding horses again, and then realized, oh, I'm a qualified food technologist, and ended up working in the food industry for quite some time, actually. So I worked in the dairy industry, the baking industry, and had a very fortunate period where I worked for a company that was supplying into Yo Valley, who were obviously organic, and became really interested in organic food. And really carved a path towards working in that sector, I suppose. I had a period with McVitie's, which I thought was my dream job, quite young still, thinking, wow, I'm going to be making all these desserts. It's going to be amazing. And then I realized that they were all full of processing aids and additives, and the ingredients panel was bigger than the cheesecake that was going into it and all the rest of it. And I just thought, oh my gosh, what on earth is going on here? And I walked away from it because it didn't feel right. Another lesson I've learned is that if you don't like the job you're in, you shouldn't do it. I mean, I know that's a risk, but I do think if you've got the confidence and you know that things aren't right, you should move away and start something else or do something different. I approached the Soil Association. I walked into that job purely by going to talk to them about how to make an organic apple pie for McVitie's, because no one seemed to be able to explain it when I was on the phone to them. And before I'd even got home, I was offered a job. I lived in Devon at the time and I'd gone to Bristol, offered a job to join them to be their technical manager. And I was already a technical manager in the food industry, so that was really fun. I met lots and lots of retailers. I spent lots of time with supermarkets. And I took us through a really, really busy period within the Soil Association where everyone wanted an organic version of what was already on the shelves. So I had a really fun time of kind of working strategically with retailers, manufacturers, and farmers and growers, helping them, because I knew if we did not build that trust right through the supply chain, the farmers that had gone through a 3-year conversion to organic would have no market. So I worked with them. I suddenly realized I could do marketing, I could do talks, I could do fundraising, all sorts of things came out of that because I started to work in the charity side to try and promote more organic production, because that was equally as important as getting through all the technical stuff. And then I got to a point where I thought, oh, I've met Dale Vince a couple of times, and Dale Vince is now my boss here at Ecotricity. And he'd come to the office a couple of times at the Soil Association. He was doing something about green energy. I was quite interested in that. So I thought, I'll contact him because I think it's time for me to move on and learn something new. So I approached him 15 years ago and said, I'd love to work with you. I kind of know lots of people in the organic world. I feel they don't really know very much about green energy. Maybe there's something I can do to help kind of grow the market and support you. And we said, yeah, let's do that. We don't know how long it'll last and whatever, but let's have a go. 15 years later, I'm still working with him. I set up our foundation, the Green Britain Foundation. As Paul was saying, we have a football club called Forest Green Rovers, which is the greenest football club in the world. And I have been the CEO for the club. I've helped it go green. I've been involved in many, many campaigns, many events, many communication strategies, and now run a rewilding program, a marine conservation program, education with Paul, with the Ministry of Eco Education and Young Green Britain Challenge, and oversee some undercover investigatory work into factory and fish farming. So I've had a brilliant career, a wonderful career. Top tip would be to do what you really love. And if you've got something that really is meaningful, it makes a hell of a lot of difference when you go to work every day.
I always think, Helen, when you explain this, it feels like you could write a book about the kind of meandering journey you've had and all these different people and kind of the networks that you've made on your way. What about this question though, then? Should every job be a green job?
I do feel I sit on the board for Catalyze Change, which is an organisation set up by a lovely lady called Tracy Lewis, based in Bristol, and we get lots of young women who come on the summit in a course and workshops every year, and I find it quite frustrating because they will think that the only way they can get involved in being in a green job is if the title's got sustainability in it, or it's green something. And I'm always trying to reassure them that it doesn't have to be like that. You can go where you want to go, do what you're good at, but take your passion with you, because you'll have that influence and that impact, hopefully, whether you're new or whether you've been in the job for a long time. You can make a difference, and you will start to hopefully turn the tide a little bit on that. I literally, before coming on the call, thought, oh, I'll just have a look and see what jobs we've got with Ecotricity. Ecotricity is all about making a difference. Some of the jobs don't sound that exciting. I've got debt collection here, I've got the accounts receivable specialist, I've got process administrators, I've got an FGR assistant groundsman, which sounds quite exciting, and a marketing and content manager at Forest Green. We make small windmills, and we have got a job for a composite technician and a production technician. Now, they need skills, they need certain qualities of people and experiences in some instances. But actually, if you come and work for us, you'd also be making a huge difference, because you'd be helping us build more green energy, you'd be helping us become even greener as a football club and hopefully very successful. Or you might be sitting down in the debt collection element of Ecotricity, somebody's got to do it, and you'd still be making a difference because you'd be talking to customers and engaging with people who've chosen our green energy. So for me, I think not every job can be green. I think we should, as Nick says, aim for that. But I think you could almost say that there's some very key jobs that have such a huge impact on the environment. And we have a sort of Green Britain vision where we talk about energy, we talk about transport, we talk about food, and we talk about making space for nature. And even if those jobs to start with were all about being green, I think that would be a huge step forward.
Well, yeah, thank you. I think there's so much of what you're saying rings and chimes with what Nick was saying there in that sense as well, of that kind of it being a mindset. So it like I really like that idea that you're saying about it not necessarily having to be explicit in the job description, and that it's more a way of approaching whatever you're doing, whatever the niche or the particular aspect might be. And also what's interesting there, Helen, is that sense that it's kind of collective action in that whatever your job is, you're working as part of a team,
Yeah.
like you're saying with Ecotricity there, so many different jobs.
Yeah, yeah, and sometimes our teams they don't realise they're making a difference. You have to remind them, because every day is a bit like, well, I work in a finance team. What does that do? It makes a massive difference. And you do have to kind of enable people to feel they're part of something big. Many people have come to work for us because they want to make a difference.
Thank you so much, Helen. What I'm going to do now is introduce our next speaker. So we're joined by Caroline, who is the Education Program Manager at WWF UK, and you're particularly working on something called the Sustainable Futures Program at the moment. But Caroline, before you kind of, I guess, get into that too much, would you like to share a little bit more around your career background?
Thanks, Paul. Yeah, it's a bit of a squiggly career, so you're trying to think about it on the spot. When I was at school, careers advice wasn't a thing. So when I was thinking about A levels and I went to university, I looked at things that interested me, and for me, that was sport. So I actually studied leisure and sport management and had a 10-year career across two governing bodies of sport, working across many different departments. And actually reflecting back on it, with the lens of skills, I can kind of see how I've come to where I am now. So within sports, I worked across coaching, clubs, umpiring, officiating, events, volunteers, which for me personally gave me a wide range of skills and experiences for my CV. But now reflecting on it just now, I'm thinking about all the skills I've taught other people along the way, whether that's empowering qualifications, coaching qualifications, young leaders, and young awards for those in schools and clubs as well. So alongside that, my passion for nature, I grew up on a farm in the countryside, always had a passion for nature. And when I finished uni and didn't know what I wanted to do with my degree, because I did it purely based on interest, that was, leisure and sport management. I went traveling, I did some volunteering abroad, and then that became my thing for the kind of following decades, where my annual leave was spent volunteering abroad, volunteering for conservation and wildlife charities in the UK, and then mostly focused in Africa. And then that led to more volunteer management that I did out in South Africa, and using all those skills and sharing that passion with other people. And that's kind of led me to where I am now. I've worked at WWF for 6 years, and part of that, working with schools, embedded my passion for nature, the planet, all the things that WWF do, which isn't just kind of wildlife, but climate, deforestation, finance, sustainability, working with governments, working with businesses. And that led us to providing two programs actually for WWF. One is the Environment Leaders Program, which is looking at leadership skills among young people, but with an environmental lens, looking at their own passions and things that every passion can have sustainability to it as well. And then, yes, sustainable futures, which I'll touch on a little bit in my answer to your question. But the passion between upskilling myself, sharing those skills with others, and then nature's kind of led me to WWF. And yeah, it's really important for young people to think, if they don't have anything, if they don't know about their career like I did when I started, I've still kind of led myself into that sustainability career, but kind of by the off chance, not because it was anything that I knew when I was thinking about my early career.
It's really interesting you say that, Caroline, because we've got some videos coming out this week of people that we've interviewed from different kind of workplaces, some of them textiles, some of them kind of more nature focused, but people who have come at this from quite a meandering journey where they've actually developed skills that then they eventually find that are really useful in the space that they find themselves. So that the idea that you're talking about kind of yeah, kind of training and teaching other people, and then that being a transferable skill that's useful within this sphere and space as well. Should we jump then to that question? You know, should every job be a green job? And I know, Caroline, you've got some slides you were going to share.
Yeah, I took it quite seriously. Um,
Yeah, we can see those.
okay, so can you see the full screen?
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, so yeah, I'm going to answer the question, then also tell you a little bit about WW's work. And of course, yes, I believe every job should, but also has to be a green job. So I'm going to throw some facts, use some evidence and research to begin with. So we know unsustainable human action is pushing the planet's natural systems to the limit, that wildlife populations are declining at rapid rates, and that our planet is warming up. All things obviously WWF are working on. So since the Industrial Revolution, the planet has warmed up by 1.2 degrees. We already have seen the impacts of this warming in the news, with record-breaking temperatures, heat waves, floods, droughts and storms, extreme weather events that were once rare become increasingly common. And these extreme weather events affect endanger people's lives, but livelihoods as well as wildlife and nature. And they're all more difficult and more expensive to protect against and recover from. And the longer we wait, the worse and more expensive these things will become. And a lot of the impacts are irreversible and self-perpetuating. So once they've started, they can't stop. WWF's Living Planet report in 2024 shows that nature is being lost at an alarming rate, with global wildlife populations having declined on average by 73% since 1970. And the UK is sadly one of the most nature depleted countries in the world. Now, 75% of young people globally said they were frightened for the future. This is from a 2021 survey by Bath University that surveyed 10,000 young people aged 16 to 25 across 10 countries. And this anxiety is strongly linked to the feelings about climate change. And this is relevant because the job market is changing into this transition into net zero, and it's taking effect. And businesses are having to change the current practices in light of these commitments. And therefore, knowledge and skills around sustainability are becoming more sought after. We need to prepare young people for the future job market so that every job can play its part and minimize the impact on the planet. So we need to have these conversations with young people to support them, to feel empowered, and when they consider their career pathways and their potential to drive change and have a positive impact on the planet. Generation Green Job Report that was carried out by the then Prince's Trust and Public First warns that a green skills crisis is looming. They polled 2,054 young people aged 16 to 25 and found that only 27% of young people had even heard of the term green jobs and could explain what it means. That 31% had heard of net zero and were able to explain what it means. However, crucially, those that were taught about green jobs in their education were more interested in these roles. So this is a big call out, I guess, to educators, employers and governments to work together to increase the perception, but also knowledge and understanding of what green jobs are. Tackling the nature and climate crisis will take a skilled and diverse workforce. And like I said, every job can play its part. And Sustainable Futures is WWF free programme for secondary schools and colleges across the UK that equips 14 to 18-year-olds with the knowledge and skills and experience to thrive in this future green net zero economy, no matter what career path they choose. Through the course, teachers and career leaders are provided with tools to inform and inspire students to build a career with positive long-term prospects that will benefit their career path and help bring our world back to life. So our whole key message is that all jobs can and must be sustainable. The course provides students with skills and competencies required to steer them into the transition of sustainability through their career choices, but also gives them a deeper understanding of environmental crisis and the importance of sustainability, so they can make those positive decisions for their career, their lifestyle, but also give them that agency to fight against climate change. It consists of 3 modules looking at what is sustainability, so things like understanding of their sustainability principles, how the interconnectedness within and between natural and human systems can help us build that sustainable future. Sustainable business, so concepts like greenwashing, circular economy, the role of businesses and their impact on the planet, such as carbon footprints. And then sustainable me, how they can apply that understanding of sustainability in their choices and lifestyles, and what, where, or how they work and in shaping that sustainable future. So it's designed to help nurture one or more of these key and skill competencies to develop young people's aspirations and confidence. They're linked throughout the course, materials and reflection practices. And these skills align to the essential employment skills that are expected to be the most in demand for the future labour market, as well together with the foundational knowledge of sustainability that will be required to transition to a green economy. I feel like this course really kind of shows that every job needs to be green, but there is a way this can be done.
Well, thank you so much, Caroline. I think what's interesting there is, so there are, explicit skills and some explicit knowledge that we might well say are particularly green. The things that jumped out to me were the things around critical thinking and the importance of that, of really kind of challenging, I guess, things like greenwashing or kind of actual business practices and thinking, actually, is that really green? And then also things like you had circular economy and donut economics and things, and shifting, you use the word transition as well, that sense of we're in a period of kind of shift towards net zero. And that sense as well that it's individuals, communities, organizations, businesses, it's everyone's responsibility to achieve that, which I think is something that's often missed. People see these things, particularly where we're about to go into COP 30, people see these as sort of government objectives and government language, but they don't necessarily see how that then fits within their own individual sphere of influence or kind of workplace. And I think that's something that maybe came out through what you were saying there.
Excellent, thank you. Yeah, and what you can transition through your lifestyle as well, which is obviously something that we talk about all the time through all of our work. But making that step into, okay, you know what you can do at home, you can do at school, and you want to recycle, you can do X, Y, Z. But it's a bit different thinking about how that works in a workplace, especially if you're a young person new to the workplace, you're at a junior level. It can be quite daunting to maybe try and make changes within especially if you are in a big organization as well. So it's just kind of giving the young people confidence. And yeah, the more young people that are doing that, I'm sure the more changes they can make.
Mm. There was a lot of parallels as well. I'm sure Helen will talk about this later of the green code that Eco-Tricity and the Green Britain Group have been developing, and lots of businesses that are similarly sort of looking for ways to say that they are sustainable and standards to sort of achieve. Also, Caroline, what's interesting is a lot of what you said there links to our next panelist. So I'm going to just introduce our next speaker, and actually it's our final speaker of the discussion. We're joined by Liam, who is the Sustainability and Curriculum Officer for the Newcastle College Group. And Liam, you've kind of got a deep interest in sustainability. You're also one of the Ministry of Eco-Education activators as well. That's something I should mention. And it was great to see you at our teacher celebration event. Liam, do you want to give a bit more of context of maybe the role that you're playing in the college, but also, yeah, kind of your career background as well?
Okay, thanks for that introduction, Paul. So yeah, I'm Liam Carr, and I'm the Sustainability and Curriculum Coordinator for NCG. And just to start with a quick word about careers that Nick sort of picked up on at the start. The job that I do now did not exist when I was at university and when I was doing my A-level studying. That job just didn't exist at all. And that'll be the same for many people who are leaving education now. And certainly if the audience, as I understand it, and Paul, you can correct me if I'm wrong, if the audience for this webinar is teachers, yeah, it is. I see you nodding. Then that will absolutely be true of young people who are learning today. I'll share my screen before I go any further. Being a former teacher, I do like to have a screen to share. You should be able to see the full screen now. Is that correct?
I think it's just loading at the moment. Oh, there it is, Liam. Yeah, we can see it.
Right, marvelous. Okay, so my job now, I'll get to the end, but introductions are important. It's nothing worse than going into a meeting and then nobody introduces themselves and everyone talks like they know each other. So it's good that we've got those thorough introductions, of which mine is the last. I've always been interested in the natural world. As a kid, I used to play outside all of the time, and that really drove my sort of career choices, my early career choices anyway. I wanted to study the natural world, and that's exactly what I did. I studied biology and environmental science. I was lucky enough to go to a couple of decent universities. And then I started a teaching career. So I was teaching biology. I was a biology teacher in a secondary school, teaching year 7 and A levels. And then I took some time abroad, similar to some of our other speakers on the panel. And I worked in an international school in Kodaikanal, which is in South India, in the hills there. And it looks idyllic, doesn't it? The school, I'm pointing on my screen there, but the school's that building you can see just on the right-hand side of the lake, and it looks absolutely idyllic. Until you realise that in this image, the trees there are eucalyptus, that's a non-native species, which outcompeted the shoulder trees, and the lake was poisoned with mercury, and so you couldn't eat the fish. So not as idyllic as things seem. And what that taught me early on in my career is that we weren't really talking about climate change at the time, but we did know about environmental impacts. And it taught me that environmental impacts aren't felt equally across the world. In some parts of the world, they are felt much more keenly than they are here in the UK. I then came back and I took a job at Newcastle College. I was teaching A levels at the start, and then I took a job looking after the adult access department within Newcastle College, and that was one of the most rewarding jobs I've ever had in my career. And it's also evidence that your career isn't fixed, because all the students that came in, they were all adults. Everyone was 19 plus. And my department would then send them off to university. They didn't have A levels, or they had A levels in different subjects, and then they would do that. And I started an environmental science course there, and this is where it does really get rewarding. And then some of them students that studied access to environmental science have gone off to do great things, and they'll make a difference in the world. I've always been involved in activism. It's a picture of me overlooking some diverse habitat, which now isn't there anymore in the northeast of England. And the land I'm stood on there is the last open cast coal mine ever in the UK. They've tried to restore it, but it's good to try and I just think it's good to try and talk about it, that there's often more than one facet to environmental action. Some of it's in your work and some of it in your personal life as well. Which brings me to the role I hold now, which is for a group of 7 colleges: Newcastle, Carlisle, the sixth form in Newcastle, West Lancs, Kidderminster, and then 2 in London, Lewisham and Southwark. And we're lucky enough as NCG to be able to have one sustainability professional, and my job is in 2 halves. I've got to try and decarbonise our estate, which really needs doing, and also when we do that, make sure students can learn from that and embed sustainability into our curriculum. And a lot of different colleges in the group. Kidderminster came out of the textile industry and was founded in 1882. The sixth form in Newcastle split from Newcastle College in 2014. And it's just really a graph to say this is a graph of global temperatures. I do love a graph from my science teaching days, but the sixth forms only existed in a warmed climate. Unlike, let's say, Newcastle and Kidderminster, which they were around when the world was cooler. To answer the question, I don't know if you want to ask the question, Paul. If there's any video being recorded, would it help if you ask the question?
Well, yeah, no, so Liam, what's your sense of this? Should every job be a green job then?
Yeah, all jobs are green jobs. And therefore, if you're teaching in a school, all of the subjects and courses are green courses. It's just a question of how green things are. So we do this in college, in our colleges with our courses, but you could also do it with subjects. You've got light, mid, and dark green. Now, I didn't come up with this. I cannot claim responsibility for it. IFAID, which is the Institute of Apprenticeships, came up with this, which is now part of Skills England. This concept that you've got light, mid, and dark green careers, but you could also do that with subjects. And how you would do it, light green things, unless you're playing for Forest Green Rovers, PE would be a light green thing where sustainability only touches. Where the pace of change is high, things like maths, IT, and business, they would be mid green. And then dark green would be everything else. And if students can get a sense that we're doing this in all of their subjects, that's when they will just see it as normal that all the subjects are green subjects, and therefore all the careers that would come out of that would be also green. And just to link back to IT, when I was starting teaching, I used to think, like, what are we doing? Like, we stopped teaching capital cities and that, didn't we? Because you could just Google it. You had that in the palm of your hand. So why would you learn even though it's interesting for pub quizzes, why would you learn all the capital cities? Now, with the advent of AI, we really need to stop teaching things that AI can do if our students are going to have employment, because climate action and green jobs, that is also an employability skill. Some of us would be disappointed when the new Ofsted framework came out. It didn't mention sustainability or climate action in it, but it did mention employability and citizenship, which is where definitely this stuff lies. So back to the point about don't teach stuff you can Google. We shouldn't really be teaching things that AI can do easily, but climate change and climate action and decarbonisation of buildings and curriculum, these are big, messy problems that require lots of disciplines to come together to be able to solve them. And that is something that AI can never replace. And then just a final point before we get into the panel discussion. Never feel like you're not doing enough. Never feel helpless. And your students shouldn't feel like this either, even when we move into a warming climate. Because they'll be discussing in COP in Brazil that we've reached 1.5, that what we said in Paris isn't going to work out. We're going to go past 1.5. And that is true, and it's very bad, and it's certainly bad for people that live in the global south, and it's also bad for people that live here in terms of economy, food production, that the other panelists can also speak to. But 1.6 is worse than 1.5. So if every bit of warming matters, then every single climate action will matter, and everything that's done in all the workplaces which our students will go on to work in, that all matters too. And I will stop sharing your screen
Thank
And
you so much, Liam.
that's all right.
I think it's what's so interesting is we've had such a variety from each of the speakers, and it's been so interesting to hear your perspective across the group of colleges and kind of understanding how you then start to weave sustainability and green jobs and green thinking across subject areas and sort of different spheres. And I think it's interesting you made that point as well around that sense of, the jobs of the future, they don't exist yet. And I'm always a little bit critical of some of that language because also I do feel like it's for us to choose, isn't it? Particularly around this AI piece, that maybe the sense of a green job is also helping to dictate, do we go into to the sort of AI and how does AI operate and all those sorts of things. And I think that's maybe an important green skill is then being able to question some of those spaces and thinking. Um, what I would like to do then is draw everyone back into the discussion. And actually, also, I just wanted to give a nod to the audience and say, if you have got a question, please feel free to put it into the chat, and then we'll come to those in a minute if anyone in the audience would like to ask anything. But before we do that, I just wanted to give everyone a chance to maybe respond to or reflect on something someone else had said during the panel discussion. Is anyone had a thought while someone else was presenting? Helen, do you want to?
Sorry, predicted I was going to ask. I was just thinking that, Liam, that was really interesting that there's already a sort of light, medium, dark shade to jobs. But I know that young people don't know about work. They don't really understand what they're going to get into anyway. And if there was a much more resonant way of being able to show how green a job is and give them some tools to help them evaluate what's green and what isn't. You hear quite often nowadays that they've got such strong values about who they want to work with and who they won't work with, mainly who they won't work with, actually. They've got an impression of work. And in some cases, I believe they've got an impression of work that work isn't all it's cracked up to be, because they've seen people completely kind of, like drained by their parents who've been absolutely burnt out by work. And somehow we've got to lift them out of that and help them feel that, the endorphins of working for a great company that is doing the right thing, or the way that they can shift things. But where do we start in helping them evaluate for themselves what's a great place to go to and where they think they could make a difference? Places that may not be quite so. I'm literally not outside a fire station or an ambulance, but it sounds but it sounds like from out here. You could just be sitting on a roundabout where all the vehicles go all over the place.
Don't worry too much, Helen. I don't think it's coming through on Zoom, so don't worry.
Oh, that's okay. But yeah, it's kind of how do we energize young people to think, work is going to be great. Work is going to be amazing. You can make a difference. And how do you navigate that? Because that's hard.
Nick, before you jump in, I was going to say it's interesting, Helen, there. What we haven't looked at is really that sense of the workplace has changed. And the biggest one maybe has been this shift to sort of more remote, home-based
Yeah,
working.
yeah,
And yeah, that the sense of going to a traditional place of work and that type of work being different. And then, yeah, like you say, young people then being conscious of that and the kind of nature of work. And I think that's also then linking in that broader idea of the cost of living and yeah, kind of.
you've even got COVID thrown in there
Well,
because
yeah, true. And then that shifted so many people's jobs and what they were
yeah,
doing.
yeah,
And as a context, I guess, yeah, to this sense of that I find that always really interesting as well, that teachers experience of the workplace and careers is often slightly outdated unless they've maybe got younger children who are going through that themselves. Yeah, for them to keep on top of that and sort of have very up-to-date knowledge. And I guess Nick is that also sits then with this sense of a lot of the careers has the defunding of a lot of that support. So, sorry, Nick, do you want to jump in there? Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's fine. I mean, yeah, I've spent, wow, probably good nearly 40 years now in this kind of career space, watching it develop. And a point you made, interestingly, Paul, actually was about earlier on, it's kind of this idea of not knowing jobs, and Liam had picked up on that as well, not knowing what you're going to go on to do. It's not a problem. Yeah, it's kind of like I think we need to kind of understand that, not everything needs to be so prescriptive. And we all talk about this kind of about, oh, let's analyze this, let's put a number on this. And actually let's get it back to self, let's get it back to the individual journeys that careers are. They're not corporate journeys, they are individual journeys. And let's try and something Helen has said as well, let's try and well, in fact, everyone actually on this panel has said the same thing. Let's try and match the job with the passions and the attributes of the individual. So that's what I would just kind of as a thought, this is too big a subject for us to kind of nail, constructively here. But I'd like to see kind of just when we talk about careers, take it from the user, the end user, i.e. the learner's, perspective first and foremost. It's understanding their attributes and their skills and their passions. And then let's give them options. It seems that kind of a lot of careers work in the past has been kind of funneling, and I kind of like turning the funnel the other way and think, actually, let's recognize how portable some of these personal skills are. Let's look how they can be applied across a myriad of different, employment sectors in the world of work. And that's what should keep it exciting. It's like, we don't have to gamify every process, but we can get into the mindset of thinking it's a wiggly journey. It's not this straight one, as Helen said, even kind of earlier. And that's fun. It's fun applying a group of skills and attributes, adding to those like you would in a game. Upskilling yourself is really important, and then being able to apply those across such a broad spectrum, because that's the reality. I talk to my kids, I talk to their friends, and they've all got side hustles going on. They've got Depop accounts where they're making a few extra quid a month. That's what careers looks like. It's in the future. That's the big question. The word careers will probably be redundant, quite frankly, quite soon, because what does it really even mean anymore? It's lost its currency. We're talking about multiple jobs, probably not in a physical place of work for many, and juggling different kinds of technologies to tap in and out of different working communities. It's like, that's exciting.
Mm. And sorry, Nick, also you should what you were just saying there links a little bit to is it the Green Buzz quiz as well?
Yeah, the green buzz is something we worked on with, many people perhaps that are listening recognize the old buzz tool, David Hodgson, who's a great friend of mine who kind of developed that back in the day. And that's about, looking at personal attributes, allocating a kind of an animal and taking it through that process of the skills and the attributes of the animal, and then applying that to kind of world of work stuff. And the green buzz, look, it's just all this stuff is to start conversations. Okay, I don't want it to be prescriptive. I don't want any of us to have the answers. I want us. It's like, what's the purpose of education again, isn't it? It's to kind of just teach young people, how to think and how to question. Find their own answers. That's what's exciting again, because everyone will have a different view, a different lens. And the green buzz was just about getting young people to recognize some of their own personal attributes, then see what kinds of green jobs, green roles, might be something they would like to kind of explore further, because they might have a fit against some of their attributes, and then launch them into a bit of work, which I want to talk to you, Paul, about off air, because it sounds like you've got some videos we need to add into the green buzz. But yeah, so it's just a free tool. If people are interested, just search green buzz, it'll come up, and it's in about its second version. But it's just we're having a bit of fun with the tool to try and get young people having these conversations, because Caroline said something really interesting again when she was going through her stats about as soon as young people do have a better understanding and a better knowledge of what a green job or a net zero job or a carbon neutral job might be, that is when they start to get much more interested and make that personal connection. And then lo and behold, guess what? They actually want to find out more about those jobs and those roles, and they realize how important it may be on their journey. So look, people have got more interesting things to say than me, so I'm going to kind of butt out now. But yeah, that's a passion, is just starting those conversations for me.
Can I jump in on that, please? Yeah, someone mentioned it earlier. We don't know what a lot of these jobs are going to be as we move into the green, green transition, and because of AI as well, but also outside of that. And like when you're younger, I said, what do you want to be when you grow up? And you get the same, a fireman, a policeman, those kind of roles. And that's so hard now if you ask a young person, because A, they don't have that knowledge. I certainly didn't, even just thinking about what I wanted to do. But because of the transition, because of the green economy, and because of AI, so working on those skills is really important. And I think young people are seeking out green jobs more now because, like I said, they are worried. There's a lot of eco-anxiety amongst young people right now, and they want agency. They want to be able to do something. So I feel like there is more out there seeking how to do stuff, and we get that a lot over email and when we go to careers fairs and speak to students. So they are trying to seek it, and I think it's just part of that education showcasing piece, getting that message to them, showing them where they can look for these jobs. But as Helen said, you can go on almost like any jobs board or organization, and you are starting to see all these kind of titles come up that look like green jobs. But when we speak to students about WWF, and we've got lawyers and we've got people that work in finance and HR, they're still contributing to our mission, for a planet and where people and wildlife can thrive together, and that's our mission. And they're all still contributing, and they think we're all just, in the field helping animals directly, but we're not. We're all in an office, but we're all contributing and working towards all the different areas that we work in, whether that's sustainability, sustainable finance, say working with businesses, working with schools, young people. Everyone is contributing to that, and it's just getting that message out there, I think.
Yeah, it's such an important message there in that sense. I was just reading also, sorry, Katerina down in Truro at Truro College, saying that she's been involved in the program, delivering it to the students down there, and has really appreciated the program. Katerina, I don't know if you wanted to jump on, turn on your mic, from your
Yeah.
perspective. Yeah, sorry, is there anything else from your perspective as a careers advisor based down in Cornwall?
I see it even turned my video. There we go. Still in the office. Yeah, no, I delivered it to a very small and select number of students in 2022. And it's such a fantastic program. I think I've been part of loads of feedback panels, etc. since, and I think the only thing that we struggle with is kind of fitting it into the curriculum, because it is it's a whole 8 hours, so we've had to kind of cut it short and deliver aspects of it. But we have done over the last few years, and we've delivered assemblies that has kind of built on what the Sustainable Futures programme originally delivered. So yeah, it's really, really, really good. What I do feel though is that you really need strong leadership, or senior management leadership, in order to do this work successfully, and you can't be doing it in your lunch break, which is kind of how it happens in some
I know,
places.
Katharina, you've been really successful in embedding this across the college, and I think it's a similar story to Liam in that sense, where is it part of the tutor program as well that you've sort of embedded aspects of these green careers skills sort of discussions?
Yeah, no, we're trying. It's part of the tutor program, and we had a really, really good screening, didn't we, last year of Climate Scam, and that then was screened to the whole of the college, and I felt that was brilliant. So thank you again to the Ministry of Education for organising and facilitating that. So that was great. And we're working together quite closely with a local charity called RJ Working. And they have made a video, an interactive tutorial tool, I guess, together with some media students, where tutors can deliver content around sustainability as part of the tutor program. And that's all done in the classroom, delivered by the tutor, because that's the only way really that you can reach. We've got about 5,000 students here at the college. So yeah, we're trialing that this year. So that's quite exciting.
Oh, thank you for sharing that, your perspective there and that story. I was just thinking we should probably consider sort of wrapping up, and I wanted to give everyone a chance to just sort of share a bit of a summary of kind of an overview, or even if it was just something that they wanted to prompt other people to do following this call, if there was maybe a piece of advice or something to go look at, or just something to have in their mind as they leave. Helen, I didn't want to jump on you first, but
Okay, I was just thinking all the way through that. There's something about these sort of careers days and so forth that feel a little bit old-fashioned, and there's kind of got to be a change, hasn't there? I think what helps people, young people particularly, think about their future is being inspired by others. And it feels a little bit like you meet someone and then you kind of know they're invested in you, they're kind of interested in you, they'll take you with them a little bit. And I think that matters more than we realise. We run the Young Green Britain Challenge within the Green Britain Foundation, and that provides for young people to come up with ideas to kind of solve around climate change or adapt to climate change. They work together, but then I think one of the most powerful things about it is that they meet their mentors, they meet people who volunteered their time to come into the school, and they work within industry. It could be all sorts of places. They could be experts in environment, or they could literally be somebody who's great at project management, whatever it might be. But the thing about it is that I think you have to see and meet people and realize what the potential is. And while you're cocooned within a school or even a college, you may not realize that the world is your oyster out there. And somehow we need to kind of switch that narrative. So Honours Careers Day, it's not everyone just standing behind their table or with their table with a few jobs and all the rest of it. It's about how do you really, really bring business to life and opportunities to life so they can make their right choices and they can make a difference.
You got me thinking, Helen, of the we did a school's tour of the 6 inches of soil the documentary around food farming and sustainability, and as part of that, we were inviting in local young farmers, and just that connection of inviting and sort of exposing the young people to people doing those jobs and having those conversations around that really opened up their imaginations of yeah, what was possible. I think that kind of connecting and using those links is a really important part, reaching out to local people. Um, Mick, would you like to go next?
Yeah, sure. And it's interesting just picking up on that point. Obviously, most of you be familiar with Gatsby benchmarks and kind of the various aspects of them. I mean, that's the bare minimum that every school should be delivering against, quite frankly. It's not any kind of badge of honor. But yes, picking on Helen's point, I mean, look, if only we could scale inspiration, inspirational speakers, inspirational moments. It's the memories that young people take from education. It's the memories, it's those moments in time that are magical that they look back on, when they with fondness. And employers are getting better. I mean, we deal with hundreds of employers over the years, and they're getting better. They realize they can't just, push some, middle-aged guy like me with grey hair in a pinstripe, and expect them to inspire young people that can't even relate to them. So things are getting better, and I'd like to say it's because a lot of businesses care. It's not. It's actually economics is driving them to get better at that engagement. Okay, so the whole market of talent attraction, the ever decreasing pool of kind of students that these employers are chasing, that's been the focus for a lot of employers, getting better, I think, at kind of looking at how they do their talent attraction programs, how they run them, who they select. But like, again, I'm not going to wang on about it. Young people need people they can relate to that can inspire them, and that's 100% correct. So some employers are good at it, some organizations are good at it, others really aren't. And we have to help them, and I think everyone needs help to get better at what they do, quite frankly. And so show them what good looks like. It's back to that again, in the same way that you kind of need to show young people, inspirational pathways, and have experiences that are going to become these great memories. um I want to link up with Liam afterwards, because I do want to kind of there's conversations I want to have off of here to learn myself, so it's all that today has shown me, Paul, really is how little I still know and how much I still must keep learning every day, and if we can always kind of keep that, then let's help and share. Look, you've pulled together a good panel, but you've more importantly, you've pulled together an audience that care that to give up their time to talk about this today, and that surely has got to give us all hope that we just need to work together more.
Yeah, well, thank you so much, Nick. Caroline.
Thanks, yeah, and thanks for inviting me here today. It's been really great and interesting. I think one takeaway for me is that squiggly careers, and that, it is a bit of an unknown what the future job market is going to look like because of climate change, because of AI. And just to do a plug about stories, I think that's really important. You can look down a jobs board and not really understand, the list of jobs Helen read out. I don't know what most of those were. But it's those stories and people's journeys. I think a lot of young people worry about the career they're going to have, and sometimes it's not a career. Sometimes it's a squiggly career. Sometimes you do something completely different to what you've studied. Worrying, do I have to go to uni? What am I going to study? Because that sets your whole life in stone. But it really doesn't. I've done the jump from sports development to working for WWF. And for National Careers, we have a series of webinars where we look at different industries, we look at the sustainability aspects of it, but importantly, we hear the stories of people in different jobs, whether they work for non-for-profit that they've maybe created themselves, whether they work for a corporate partner, whether they're a celebrity, and we hear these stories. We hear how their journey can sometimes be all over the place, but they're doing what they love now. That they do think about sustainability within those roles, and hopefully it's like an inspiring set. So we do that. We're doing that again for Careers Week, but our videos that we did this year are on there with some really exciting guest speakers. And I think what the Sustainable Future course does is looking at sustainability, looking at business, and then looking at yourself is kind of a really good foundation for students to think about, okay, what's important to me? Am I going to enjoy what I'm doing? And am I going to have an impact?
Yeah, thank you so much. Liam.
Yeah, thanks to everyone for attending. First of all, thanks to the other panelists. Just what Katarina was saying about them tutorial resources, I would say that, well, it's not just me that says it. With what's happening with the climate, we're in the sort of one of the greatest challenges that's faced the world outside of like wars and things like that, dreadful things like that. That's sort of where we're at. So we need everyone to do everything, but we shouldn't. We should still have sort of optimism for the future, because otherwise our students won't be able to do anything about it. But just getting back to that point, we need everyone to do everything. The tutorial thing is a great thing to do. If you can do that alongside the subject experts, embedding something in their curriculum, that's going to make it more relevant to the students. So you need to do both. You need to have standalone tutorial resources to like pique interest in case studies and things like that. But really the change in student attitudes come when they can see their favorite teacher in their favorite subject, then also saying, oh, we learned about that in tutorial, and actually it is real. So in practical terms, in sustainability education, that's what we need to do. And I'm trying to think, I think that was about it. Yeah, looking forward to taking these discussions offline. Stay in touch, add me on LinkedIn, send me a message. All of them things. I can't believe I just did that. Like, subscribe. But yeah, hopefully I'll stay in touch with the people, both the panelists and the people on the call. So
Thank you so much, Liam. And that was a really good, tangible piece of advice there, and I think that's really useful as well. I think I wanted to draw this to a close also with a focus on that sense of excitement. And we're saying it's a very changeable world. There's a lot of chaos, but actually, there is then the potential for so much hope and yeah, positive outcomes. And that's the bit that we need to focus on, is how much of doing these things can bring joy and bring people together and yeah, that will be the bit that draws more people in. So this week is Green Careers Week. You definitely have to follow Nick and all of the different channels on social media. There's so many exciting things going on. We've got lots more content coming out as well. We've got lots of interviews with some interesting and dynamic people from different walks of life and different businesses. We've also got a teacher's guide as well that people can draw advice from. We've tried to pull together lots of the different things that organisations have got and bring them together into one place. And yeah, we're looking forward to see what else everyone is getting up to this week, but also conscious that, yeah, okay, this is one Green Careers Week, but there's a whole year of school, isn't there? So that beyond this week, this is something that you can pick up and continue with as well. I think that's probably the end there. So thank you so much, and have a good rest of the day, the evening. Cheers.
Thank you, Paul.
Bye. Bye.